The stone corridor fell away behind Elias, the ancient slab humming beneath his boots as if the hill itself breathed with each step. He pressed forward, the silver-fanged wolf, its coat a shifting dusk of ash and moonlight, eyes like polished onyx, moving beside him with a slow, measured gait. The bite on its flank throbbed, a crimson ember against the dark fur. Elias reached into the torn cloak he had wrapped around the wound, feeling the heat of the blood, the tremor of the animal's breath. "Hold still," he whispered, more to calm his own nerves than the beast. He whispered the old chant his grandmother once sang, a fragment of an ancient tongue that had survived only in his memory. The words fell like a promise, a thread of resonance that seemed to stitch the wound together. The silver wolf's growl softened, the tension in its shoulders loosening. Its pain faded, replaced by a low, contented rumble that vibrated against Elias' chest. The slab's incline flattened, and a faint light filtered through a narrow fissure high above. Dust swirled in the thin beam, catching on the damp walls. The passage opened onto a cavern that opened further into a natural tunnel, the air cooler, scented with mineral and old earth. Stalagmites rose like the broken spines of ancient beasts, and a subterranean river sang a low, persistent hymn. Elias knelt, letting the wolf lie down on his cloak. He pressed his palm against the wolf's flank, feeling a faint pulse of ancient power radiating from the injury, a resonance that matched the faint hum of the slab. In that moment, the world outside the stone seemed distant, a muffled echo of a life he had left behind. Stable hands, the clang of iron, the narrow stalls of the market. The wolf lifted its head, ears pricking at a sound that seemed to come from the river's flow. A faint ripple of silver light danced on the water's surface, reflecting the faint ember of the wolf's fangs. The creature's eyes met Elias, and in them he saw something older than the hill, a memory of a pact sealed millennia ago between humans and the shadows that prowled the night. "Silvar," Elias said, the name forming in his tongue as naturally as breath. The wolf's ears flicked, and a low howl rose, barely audible above the river's song. It was a sound of acknowledgement, of trust. The slab beneath them shivered again, and a thin column of light widened, creating a doorway through the rock. Beyond, the world opened to a forest that lay in a perpetual twilight, the canopy a woven tapestry of leaves that caught the last of the day's waning gold. The forest was silent save for the distant call of a night bird and the rustle of unseen creatures in the underbrush. Silvar rose, its movement fluid, muscles rippling beneath fur that seemed to swallow and reflect light. Elias stood, wiping his hands on his cloak, his eyes scanning the forest. The ancient path that wound through the trees seemed both familiar and foreign, as if it remembered steps taken ages ago, now reclaimed by nature. He took a breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, a mixture of pine, damp earth, and the faint metallic scent of blood. The bond between him and the wolf tightened, a thread of understanding that required no words. He slipped the wolf's leash, a simple cord of leather he had fashioned from his own boots, around its neck, not as a tether of control, but as a reminder of the partnership they now shared. The forest opened onto a clearing where a small settlement lay nestled among the trees. A collection of timber-framed houses, smoke rising lazily from stone hearths, lanterns flickering in the early evening. The village of Harrowden, known in whispered tales for its hunters who prized trophies of beasts and their keen disdain for wild tamers. The very name made Elias' heart tighten. He had heard of the Order of the Iron Stag, a guild that chased down any creature that defied their rule, and an even darker sect, the Veiled Hand, who believed that the old taming arts were a blasphemy that needed extermination. Elias pulled his cloak tighter around his shoulders, the wolf's silver fur glinting under the dim lantern light. He pushed the line of the settlement forward, his feet silent on the soft earth. The villagers, broad-shouldered and wary, turned their heads as he passed, eyes narrowing at the sight of the wolf. Children peered from behind doorways, their faces a mix of awe and fear. A woman with a weathered face and a shawl of woven reeds stepped forward, her hands clasped around a wooden staff etched with runes. "You're far from the road, stranger," she said, her voice low and cautious. "And that beast, it is not of this realm." Elias inclined his head. "I am Elias Varn, this is Silvar, we seek shelter for the night." She studied the wolf, noting the silver fangs that caught the lantern's glow, the faint sheen of its coat. "I am Mara, keeper of the inn. We have no room after the harvest feast, but you may rest in the stable. No one will see you before dawn." She glanced back at the village as a group of men in dark cloaks passed, their insignia, a crimson stag over a black field, gleaming on their breastplates. The Iron Stag hunters, their presence a silent threat. "Thank you," Elias said, bowing slightly. He guided Silvar through the narrow gap between two timber stalls, the wolf's steps careful, its ears pricked at every rustle. The stable smelled of hay and the faint sweat of animals. He laid the wolf's leash over a post, letting it settle on a pile of straw. Mara handed him a tin cup of broth, the steam curling in the cool night air. "You'll need strength," she murmured, "and be wary. The hunters do not welcome strangers with beasts, especially not ones that whisper of old magic." Elias took a sip, feeling the broth warm his throat. He pressed his forehead against the wolf's flank, feeling the steady thrum of its heart. The bond deepened, an unspoken promise that they would protect each other against the world's hunter's eyes. That night while the village slept, a low howl rose from the forest, no longer the wolf's but something deeper, resonating through the trunks and the earth. Silvar's ears twitched, and the wolf rose, its eyes scanning the darkness. From the shadow of the trees emerged a shape, taller than any man, draped in a cloak of woven night, its face hidden beneath a cowl. In its hand glowed a faint, violet sigil that pulsed like a heartbeat. Elias stiffened, his hand moving instinctively to the small dagger at his belt, the one his uncle had given him for protection. The cloaked figure stepped into the glow of a lantern, revealing a face scarred by old battles, eyes hollow yet sharp. "You carry the mark," the figure whispered, voice a blend of rust and wind. "The silver fang, it has not been seen for 3 centuries." Silvar growled, low and protective, fur bristling. The figure raised a hand, a thin wisp of violet energy spiraling from his palm, wrapping around Silvar's neck, then dissipating without harm. "I am Kellan, a wanderer of the forgotten paths. I have sought the bond bearers, those who still remember the ancient pact." Elias lowered his dagger, sensing no threat. "I am Elias. I found Silvar in the ruins beneath the hill." Kellan cut him off, eyes flickering to the wolf's silver fangs. "Your skill is a relic, a dying ember, yet here it burns. You have awakened the old debt. The hunters will come for you. The veiled hand will not forgive what you have unleashed." A distant bark of a hunting hound echoed through the night, a reminder that the Iron Stag's presence was already moving toward the village. Kellan's cloak rustled as he turned, the violet sigil flaring brighter. "Come, there is a place where the ancient bond can be forged fully. The forest holds a stone, a heart of the world, where the beast and tamer may bind beyond blood. But it is guarded by the ancient treant Aelthar, who has not opened its roots to man since the skies fell." Elias glanced at Silvar, whose eyes seemed to soften, as if understanding the request. He nodded, the resolve in his chest settling like stone. "Take us there," he said. Kellan nodded, and together they slipped through the shadows, Silvar's silence a stark contrast to the crunch of leaves under their boots. The path they took wound deeper into the forest, beyond the light of the village lanterns, into a realm where moonlight filtered through a canopy of ancient trees, their bark etched with runes that seemed to pulse with an inner glow. The deeper they walked, the more the forest seemed to respond. Vines swayed, parting to make way, while nightbirds sang mournful songs that seemed to echo the memory of the world before the hunter's iron rule. The air grew cooler, and a faint mist rose from the mossy ground, wrapping the trio in a veil of silver. They reached a clearing where a massive tree rose like a cathedral spire, its trunk wider than a house, roots sprawling like veins across the ground. At its base lay a stone altar, a slab of polished granite that reflected the moonlight, inscribed with symbols that matched those on Kellan's sigil. "The heart of Aelthar," Kellan murmured, stepping reverently. "The ancient treant guards the binding. If we can awaken it, the bond may be sealed, granting us strength beyond any weapon." Silvar approached the altar, its silver fur glowing faintly as moonbeams struck it. The wolf lowered its head, sniffing the stone. A low hum rose from the ground, resonating with the wolf's breath. Elias felt the voice of the forest, a whisper that wrapped around his mind like a gentle wind, urging him to speak the ancient words. He closed his eyes, recalling the fragment of his grandmother's chant, the syllables that felt like a forgotten lullaby. "Eldorathon, Asherakil, bind the night to the silver tide." The words left his lips, trembling at first, then gaining strength. The altar pulsed, a soft violet light spreading across the roots of the great tree. A deep rumble surged from the earth, and the massive trunk of the treant shivered. From behind the bark, a face emerged, gnarled, eyes like amber lanterns, deep hollows where a mouth might be, but a presence that was both ancient and alive. The treant's bark cracked, revealing a pair of hands woven from wood and roots. From those hands, a faint silver mist rose, coalescing into a shape that resembled a dragonfly made of living bark. The treant's voice rumbled low and resonant. "Who dares to awaken the heart of the world?" Kellan stepped forward, kneeling. "I am Kellan, a seeker of the forgotten. With this man, Elias, and his silver-fanged companion, we offer the pact of trust. We seek to revive the bond that once wove humans and beasts together." The treant's eyes turned toward Silvar, studying the wolf's silver fur and luminous fangs. The silver fang has not been seen since the age of the first moon. Its blood carries the echo of the old covenant. "Speak, child of the pact, why do you seek our blessing?" Elias felt Silvar's weight against his leg, the animal's heart beating in rhythm with his own. He spoke, his voice steady. "Because the world has forgotten the balance. Beasts are hunted, the wild is caged, and the hunter's iron clamps tighten around every living thing. I seek to restore the harmony, to give those creatures a voice again, and to protect the ones I love." The treant's bark seemed to soften, sap oozing like a sigh. "Very well," it said. "The binding requires a sacrifice of trust, not blood. You must each lay a piece of yourself upon the stone, offering what you cherish most, that the world may remember the pact." Kellan placed a small crystal, pulsing with violet light, onto the altar. Silvar lowered its head, its silver fangs touching the stone. A thin line of light flowed from the wolf's teeth into the granite, spreading like a silver river across the surface. Elias placed his hand, the skin scarred from years in the stables, over his heart, feeling the rhythm of his own pulse merge with the glow. The stone glowed brighter and the treant's roots entwined around them, lifting them gently. A surge of energy coursed through Elias, a sensation like wind through a canyon, pulling at his memories of his family, his life before the ruin, the scent of hay, the soft whinny of horses. The wolf's mind flooded with images of moonlit hunts, of the smell of pine after rain, of a bond that felt older than any master. When the light dimmed, a silver sigil flared upon Silvar's flank, a mark of the ancient order, a rune of the bond, glowing softly. The treant's voice echoed, "The pact is renewed. You shall walk the path of the beast tamer once more, and the world shall feel the whisper of the forgotten." Kellan bowed. "The road ahead is fraught. The iron stag will learn of your bond soon, and the veiled hand will send their enforcers. You must move, find allies, and protect this secret." Elias looked at Silvar, the silver fangs now unblemished, the wolf's eyes bright with newfound purpose. He felt a surge of confidence, the weight of the ancient bond settle within him like a mantle. "We will," he said, voice firm. "We will find a place where beasts can live free, and we will teach others the old ways." Kellan turned, his violet sigil flickering as if a star beginning to fade. "There is one more thing," he said, drawing a small, weathered map from his cloak. The parchment showed a series of symbols leading to a distant mountain range, where a storm eagle, an ancient creature that ruled the skies, was said to reside. The storm eagle, Alra, holds the wind's memory. If you bind her, you will have the sky as an ally. Elias stared at the map, the lines of the route winding through treacherous passes, dense forests, and open plains. The thought of finding such a creature both thrilled and terrified him. He had only just bonded with Silvar, yet the world already demanded more. Silvar lifted its head, ears perked, as if hearing the distant cry of a great bird riding the wind. The sound was faint but resonant, a screech that seemed to shake the leaves of the treant itself. Kellan placed a hand on Elias' shoulder. "Your journey begins at dawn. Trust in the bond and you will not walk alone." The treant's massive limbs lowered, allowing them to descend back onto the forest floor. The night air was crisp, the mist beginning to thin as the moon climbed higher. Silvar nudged Elias forward, its silver fur brushing his leg, a silent promise that they would face whatever came together. Elias turned towards Harrowden, the village still asleep under lantern light, unaware of the ancient covenant reborn in the forest. He felt the weight of the map in his pocket, the sigil on Silvar's flank, and the echo of Kellan's violet sigil fading into the night. As they walked back, the sounds of the hunters grew louder, a clang of armor, the distant bark of hounds, the low mutter of men searching. The iron stag's banners fluttered in the wind, the crimson stag crest glinting under moonlight, a reminder that the world would not accept their bond willingly. Elias paused at the edge of the village, looking back toward the tree line where the heart of the world pulsed faintly, a beacon of ancient power. He drew a deep breath, feeling the night air fill his lungs, the scent of pine and earth mingling with the faint iron tang of blood still fresh on Silvar's fangs. He whispered to the wolf, "We go at first light. Until then we hide." Silvar nudged his hand, its eyes reflecting the silver of the moon. The bond between them was now sealed, a promise bound by trust and ancient magic, unbreakable by steel or fear. In the distance, torches flickered as hunters entered Harrowden, their shadows stretching across the cobblestones. The village's shutters began to close, wooden doors bolted as men whispered of the beast with silver fangs. The tension in the air crackled like static. Elias slipped into the shadows of an alley, Silvar's nose low to the ground, scenting the path ahead. He felt a faint tremor under his feet, a low, rhythmic thump that seemed to come from the earth itself, as if the world were holding its breath. He reached a small, half-collapsed stone doorway hidden behind a tapestry of vines. Inside lay a narrow cellar, the floor dusted with years of neglect. He pushed aside a broken barrel, revealing a hidden stash. A wooden chest, its lid adorned with a faded engraving of a wolf and a tree intertwined. Inside, a leather-bound tome lay, its pages yellowed, the title etched in an unfamiliar script, "The Codex of Bond Makers." Elias opened it carefully, the pages rustling like dry leaves. He read a passage aloud, his voice barely a murmur. Only when the heart of the world beats in unison with the wild's rhythm can the true bond be forged. The silver fang marks the keeper, the storm eagle the sky's guardian, the ancient treant the earth's memory. Together they form the Tri-Pact, a shield against those who would shatter the balance. He looked up, the faint glow of the lantern outside casting shadows on the walls. The hunters' boots grew louder, their shouts echoing through the village streets, searching for the beast tamer whispered in dread. Kellan's map, the sigils, the codex, each piece fit together like a puzzle that could reshape the world. A sudden crash echoed from the street outside, a wooden door slammed, and the sound of a horse's hooves thundering over the cobblestones. Someone shouted, "The wolf, the one with silver teeth. Capture it." Elias' heart pounded, not from fear but from the realization that the world had taken notice. Silvar's ears twitched. The wolf let out a soft, resonant howl that seemed to vibrate through the stone walls, as if calling to something far beyond their immediate sight. A silhouette appeared at the far end of the alley, cloaked in darkness, a figure moving with the grace of a predator. The hooded man's eyes glowed faintly crimson, and a faint aura of violet energy pulsated at his fingertips, the mark of the veiled hand. The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a scarred face and a thin, silver blade sheathed at his side. "Elias Varn," he hissed, voice a rasp of old curses. "The bond you hold is a danger to us all. Surrender the wolf, and perhaps we will spare your life." Elias tightened his grip on the codex, feeling the pulse of the ancient magic within its pages. He glanced at Silvar, seeing the resolve in the wolf's eyes, the quiet fire of loyalty. He thought of Kellan's promise, of the storm eagle that waited on distant peaks, of the treant's ancient wisdom. His voice steady, he answered, "You seek to break what was forged in the first night of the world. I will not hand over what I have sworn to protect." The veiled man smiled, a thin crescent of cruelty. "Then you will die with your beast. The iron stag will not tolerate this rebellion. They will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Silvar stepped forward, its head low, teeth barely showing, but the aura in its breath seemed to coalesce into a faint silver mist that curled around Elias' feet. The air thickened, the scent of ozone mixing with the forest's pine. Elias felt a surge of energy from the codex, a tremor that resonated through his bones, as if the very words on the page ignited a dormant power within him. He raised his hand, palm open, and a thin ribbon of violet light emanated, intertwining with the silver mist from Silvar's breath. The two colors merged, forming a lavender hue that pulsed with a rhythmic heartbeat. The veiled man recoiled, eyes widening in surprise. "What?" Before he could speak, a distant thunder rolled, a low rumble that seemed to come from the heavens themselves, shaking the stone walls. From the darkness beyond the alley, the silhouette of a massive eagle with storm-gray feathers and eyes like electric bolts descended, its wings beating with the force of a gale. Alra, the storm eagle, landed on the narrow ledge above, her talons gripping the edge of the stone. Lightning crackled around her plumage, casting jagged light over the scene. The veiled man took a step back, his hand trembling around his blade. "Seems you have called my name, child." The eagle's voice resonated in Elias' mind, not through sound but through thought, a crackling whisper of wind. "Your bond is true. I will aid you, but the path ahead is fraught." Silvar let out a howl that blended with the eagle's call, a duet of silver and storm. The violet silver ribbon swirled around the two beasts, forming a luminous tether that connected wolf, eagle, and tamer in a circle of light that pulsed with each heartbeat. The veiled man's eyes flickered, disbelief turning to anger. He raised his hand, summoning a swirl of dark energy that coalesced into a shadowy blade. The blade sliced through the air, aiming for Elias' throat. In an instant, Alra's wing beat with the force of a hurricane, the wind gusting forward, scattering the shadow blade into fragments that dissolved into mist. Silvar lunged forward, its silver teeth flashing, but instead of striking the man, it brushed his wrist, a gentle reminder of the bond's power over violence. Elias felt the connection deepen. The codex's pages glowed, symbols aligning, forming an image of three intertwined sigils: silver, violet, and storm gray. The illumination filled the alley, pushing back the darkness, making the veiled man's features clear. A scar across his left cheek, eyes that flickered with the same violet aura as Kellan's, now revealed as a disciple of the veiled hand. "You will not break us," Elias said, his voice steady, the words reverberating through the alley. "The bond is old, and it will not be undone by fear." The veiled man snarled, "Then you will fall with your beast." He lunged, but the bond's light flared brighter, a wave of energy that surged through the alley, knocking the man back against the stone wall. His cloak snarled, the violet aura around his limbs flickering out. Silvar stood between Elias and the attacker, its silver fangs bared, the wolf's body a living shield. The storm eagle spread her wings, a roar of thunder that seemed to shake the very air, and a bolt of lightning crackled from her talons, striking the stone wall and sending a spray of dust into the night. The veiled man staggered, his eyes wide with terror. You have the Tri-Pact," he whispered, disbelief laced with dread. Elias stepped forward, his hand still raised, the lavender light pulsing at his palm. "The Tri-Pact is the promise of harmony. We will protect it, even if you would see us crushed." The veiled hand's disciple fell to his knees, his cloak slipping, revealing a sigil similar to Kellan's, but twisted, broken. He looked up, eyes pleading. "Please, I was told to eradicate the old ways I did not know." Alraz's gaze softened, the storm within her eyes calming. "Your path can change," she thought, a gentle wind blowing through the alley. "But you must first surrender your hatred." The veiled man, humbled, extended his hand, the scarred palm open. "Take me with you," he said, voice hoarse. "Teach me the true bond, let me atone." Elias hesitated, considering the risk. Silvar's ears twitched, tasting trust in the man's fear. The Tri-Pact shimmered, the bond between wolf and tamer, eagle and sky, now extended to a man who once wore darkness. The night grew still, the distant sounds of the hunters fading as they realized their prey had slipped beyond reach. The alley, illuminated by the soft lavender glow of the bond, became a sanctuary, a small island of peace amid a world that coveted domination. Elias lowered his hand, the light receding into the codex, which now lay open on the stone floor, its pages fluttering as if breathing. He turned to the veiled man. "If you truly seek redemption, you will walk the path with us. The veiled hand will not accept you back, but you may find a new purpose." The man nodded, tears glistening in his scarred eyes. He brushed away the dust, revealing a small brass amulet hidden beneath his tunic, an emblem of the veiled hand, now tarnished. Alraz lifted her wing, a gust of wind fanning the pages of the codex, scattering a handful of leaves that spiraled upward, catching the moonlight, twinkling like tiny stars. Silvar placed its head on Elias' arm, the wolf's breath warm against his skin. The bond was no longer a secret whispered in hidden caves. It was a living promise, witnessed by a storm eagle, a treant's memory, and now a repentant hunter. Elias felt the weight of his future settle upon his shoulders. There were still many hunters, many factions, many eyes that would seek to break the ancient pact. Yet the silver wolf's fur brushed his cheek, the eagle's wind whispered his name, and even the veiled man's redemption sang of hope. As the first pale light of dawn seeped through the cracks of the stone doorway, the trio stepped out of the alley into the waking village. The villagers' shutters were still shut, but the smell of fresh bread began to rise from a distant bakery. The Iron Stag's banners were still visible in the distance, their red crests stark against the pale sky. Elias looked toward the horizon, where the jagged silhouettes of mountains rose, their peaks shrouded in storm clouds. He thought of the map Kellan had given him, the path to Alraz's nesting cliffs, the promise of the ancient treant's guidance, and the lingering question that now pulsed in his mind. Would the world accept the resurgence of the lost art? Would the hunters, the veiled hand, and the many unseen forces allow the Tri-Pact to survive? He tightened his grip on the codex, the silver sigil on Silvar's flank glinting in the dawn. The wind carried Alraz's distant cry, a promise that the sky itself would watch over them. And somewhere beyond the mountains, a hidden sanctuary waited, a place where forgotten beasts might once again roam free. Elias turned to Silvar, his voice low. We walk at first light, my friend. The world will change or it will try to break us. Yet we have the bond, we have the pact. Let them come. Silvar's howl rose, echoing across the valley, a silver thunder that met the eagle's distant roar, a sound that seemed to stitch the sky, earth, and night together in a single, unbroken chord. The veiled hand's former disciple followed quietly, his steps uncertain but resolute, a new name forming on his lips, perhaps not as a hunter but as a keeper of the balance. And in the distance, the Iron Stag's men rode towards Harrowden, torches blazing, their eyes set on a wolf of silver fangs. Their leader raised his sword, its blade catching the first rays of sun, and shouted, "Find the beast. Bring the tamer to the arena. Let the world see the power of the old methods." Elias felt the wind shift, the edge of the horizon darkening as storm clouds gathered, hinting at a sudden, raging tempest. He lifted his eyes, seeing the faint outline of a massive, winged shape descending from the storm, another creature, perhaps the storm eagle's kin, unseen yet looming. The sky cracked, lightning flashing, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to hold its breath. In that instant, Elias understood that the choice before him was no longer only survival or secrecy. It was a decision that would shape the fate of the bond, the beasts, and the very fabric of this world. He tightened his grip on the reins of destiny, feeling the surge of the hidden power within the silver fang, and whispered into the gathering storm, "We choose to fight, not flee. We choose to bind, not break." The thunder rolled louder, the lightning illuminated the valley, and the force of the storm seemed to coalesce around the silver wolf, the storm eagle, and the trembling man who had once been a hunter. As the rain began to fall in sheets, the three figures stood together on the cusp of destiny, their united resolve cracking the silence of the morning. The storm surged, and a single blinding bolt struck the ground at Elias' feet, carving a fissure that glowed with violet light. From the crack rose an ancient rune, pulsing with the same silver-violet hue of the bond. Elias stared at it, the rune's lines forming an unfinished script, a promise yet to be written, a future yet to be decided. He turned to Silvar, to Al-Ra, to the repentant hunter, and felt the weight of the unsaid question hanging in the air as the storm roared overhead. Will you stand with us and let the old ways rise again, or will you let fear bleed the world dry?